On July 21, 1999, in Huntsville, Alabama, a NASA engineer gazed at his screen as rows of code abruptly began to fade away. An intruder was currently infiltrating their network. Files were vanishing right before his eyes, critical ones tied to the life support for the International Space Station. For the next 21 days, NASA had to shut down those essential systems, leaving the station circling Earth without proper backup. Yet NASA wasn't the sole victim. Over at the Pentagon, sensitive emails were getting drained out. Nuclear defense procedures were being pulled down, along with captured military passwords. However, the hacker slipped up in one novice way. He connected using his home IP address. The FBI followed the trail straight to a house in Miami. Agents prepared for action, bracing for a spy from abroad or a terror group. Instead, when they burst through the door, they discovered a 15-year-old boy still in his pajamas, glued to his PC. Who was this young intruder, and what allowed him to infiltrate the Pentagon? Jonathan James first encountered computers at 6 years old, back in 1989, when his father, a programmer, brought home a gateway PC. In mere months, the boy had committed every option to memory, conquered all the games, and begun posing questions that stumped even his dad. At 8, Jonathan broke his initial password. It was the one on the parental restrictions designed to cap his computer hours. His father caught him at 3 a.m. with red-rimmed eyes and hands blurring over the keys. The consequence? They seized the machine for 2 weeks. But Jonathan's comeback flipped the script entirely. He hacked into Palmetto Middle School's grade database, switched his Math C to an A, printed the altered card, and pushed it toward his parents at the dinner table. __0, he declared, __1, his mother's utensil hung suspended in the air. His father spotted the method in the output, SQL injection, a skill that eluded most coders until university. Their son had just pulled off a cyber shakedown. They handed back the computer that very evening. In the digital world, Jonathan went by the alias Comrade. He shared no photos, no backstory, just pure talent that caught the eye of seasoned hackers. In chat rooms like Hack the Planet and number 26000, he picked up methods that wouldn't appear in books for years to come, things like buffer overflows, packet sniffing, and port scanning. One guide, known as M0CSTH8, shared the key principle: don't strike the same mark more than once. Always ramp it up. Jonathan jotted it all down in a spiral notebook, secured away in his desk. Those pages would eventually serve as proof. His debut major hit arrived in February 1999. BellSouth, the massive telecom provider for 22 million users in 9 states. Jonathan probed their setup over 3 sleepless nights, spotted an outdated Solaris server with a vulnerable SendMail edition, and eased in undetected. He roamed through client records, payment setups, staff messages. The firm's whole Southeast telecom backbone lay exposed like a defenseless metropolis. He took no files, altered nothing, and vanished without a mark, save for one log entry that ops wouldn't spot for 8 months. The breach clocked in at 4 hours. Jonathan dismissed it as warm-up. Warm-up for bigger things? By 15, he'd already pierced a Fortune 500 firm managing comms for millions. Classes seemed absurd. Why grind through calculus when you could rewrite the world? His room sported no sports stars or band idols on the walls, only schematics of networks and raw assembly scripts. As peers fretted over learners' permits, Jonathan pored over leaked NSA files on Tempest shielding and Van Eck phreaking. Not trading cards, but hoarding zero-day vulnerabilities. Then on a late June evening, bent over his homemade Linux rig, he unearthed the prize of prizes: a vulnerable server bearing a .gov domain. The address pointed to Huntsville, Alabama. Unbeknownst to him, he'd just located NASA's entry point. Would he turn the knob? What secrets awaited inside? June 29, 1999. Jonathan's tool spat out the IP 192.76.9.1.54. A backward DNS check revealed an odd subdomain, nas3.m.sfc.nasa.gov, tied to Marshall Space Flight Center. His heart raced. NASA, the outfit that landed people on the moon, operated servers with open TNet ports, and root logins defaulted to __3__. Jonathan rubbed his eyes in disbelief. He reran the probe thrice more. Identical outcome. NASA's defenses were flimsier than his school's. He built his approach with precision, starting with a basic buffer overflow in the bind DNS tool for basic user entry. Next, he climbed to full control via a fresh kernel, flaw released only weeks prior. In just 17 minutes, he claimed root on 13 linked systems. No alerts sounded. No staff caught on. NASA's internal files, which he accessed amid the takeover, revealed these machines oversaw the environmental controls and life support, ELSS, for the International Space Station. Scripts there handled oxygen production, CO2 scrubbing, water recycling, heat management, all the lifelines preserving crew in the void of space. Jonathan began the download at 11:43 p.m. His 56K modem drawing in data at a sluggish 5.2 kilobytes per second. The ECLSS source code consisted of 3,471 files, amounting to 38 megabytes. With such a slow connection, it would take at least 2 hours, and he kept an eye on the progress bar inching along, knowing each percentage equaled code that NASA priced at $50,000. This went far beyond a typical corporate database or mere phone logs. It served as the vital software shield separating astronauts from the deadly void of space. By 1:52 a.m., the transfer had finished, leaving Jonathan with the full ECLSS codebase stored on his hard drive. At last, NASA's intrusion detection setup picked up on the irregularities. On July 7th, 8 days following Jonathan's breach, system admin James McCarthy detected odd processes eating up extra CPU on the Mars Pathfinder support server. He followed the trail through the audit logs, uncovering evidence of a rootkit installation, backdoor account setups, and data exfiltration. McCarthy's decision to alert the team led to 3 weeks of NASA outages. The command came, take it all offline. As a result, technicians unplugged 43 servers from the network. Critical ISS missions shifted to backup setups on standalone systems. Each line of code needed thorough checking, 3.2 million lines spanning various platforms. High above Earth, the International Space Station hurtled along at 17,500 miles per hour, carrying 6 astronauts, relying on emergency measures as NASA hunted for any signs of compromise. Oh, and if you're hooked on these wild true tales of teen geniuses taking on massive billion-dollar giants, hit subscribe. Jonathan's NASA breach was merely the curtain raiser. In the meantime, Jonathan pored over his hard-won treasure. The ECLSS code exposed NASA's methods for handling failures, their redundancy designs, and algorithms for calibrating sensors. Yet one thing nagged at him: the code's quality was abysmal. It featured outdated functions, rigidly embedded values, and comments scattered in 3 languages. This multi-million-dollar NASA creation resembled a sloppy undergrad team effort. Quote 4, he vented on IRC. Quote 5, a fellow hacker shot back. Quote 6. Jonathan paused, fingers resting on the keys. The Pentagon, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, nuclear arms, biowarfare, chemical protection. Cracking NASA had felt almost too simple. Just how tough could the military prove? What secret networks might a 15-year-old tap into right from his bedroom? On August 14, 1999, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency managed 847 servers spread over 17 sites. Jonathan targeted their primary data center in Dulles, Virginia, which linked Fort Belvoir, Kirtland Air Force Base, and the Pentagon. The core router, a Cisco 7206VXR, was stuck on iOS version 11.1, 3 years behind. Riddled with 14 exposed weaknesses, he struck at a vulnerability Cisco fixed back in 1997. One DT had ignored in updates. With a single tailored packet, he gained privileged access. The military's nuclear defense web gave way as easily as a flimsy lock. Still, Jonathan craved more than entry. He sought real intel. By August 19th, he rolled out a tailored packet sniffer along DT's core network. Every packet routing through the Dulles hub duplicated itself to his server. That included emails from defense.gov domains, login details for SIPR stations, and secret memos on Y2K readiness for nuclear control setups. Over 4 weeks, the tool nabbed 3,312 emails, 1,879 distinct passwords, plus 19 accounts tied to serving military members, like Major Thomas Daniels, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes, and contractor Michael Rezanoff. Armed with these, Jonathan could now enter systems deep in the Pentagon's E-ring, the secure hub where the Joint Chiefs shaped U.S. defense plans. September 3, 1999, using Daniel's stolen credentials, Jonathan signed into the Major's workstation. It held 1,247 files, including evaluations of North Korean missile threats, emergency blueprints for bioweapon strikes on key cities, and guidelines for nuclear sub-communications. A directory named Operation Dragon Tempest outlined digital attack tactics against Chinese forces, oddly highlighting flaws, much like the ones Jonathan had just used. He scanned rosters for chemical response squads, directives for satellite monitoring over Iraq, and reports on Russian nuclear arsenal safeguards that stayed hidden from Congress. A Miami teenager now grasped more of U.S. defense secrets than plenty of top brass. The juiciest discovery hit on September 18th. Email chains between DT head Jay Davis and Defense Secretary William Cohen covering the FY's $298 million allocation for cooperative threat reduction efforts. This initiative locked down stray nukes from ex-Soviet republics. The messages listed unsecured warhead bunkers in Kazakhstan, shipment timelines for weapons-grade uranium out of Ukraine, and identities of Russian experts courted to stop them from peddling know-how to Iran. Jonathan discovered details on Operation Sapphire, the covert U.S. mission that airlifted 600 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium out of Kazakhstan to avert any risk of theft. These weren't relics from the past. They outlined missions unfolding in the present, all while Jonathan observed from the confines of his bedroom. Still, he never traded, disclosed, or turned that knowledge into anything destructive. Instead, he stashed it away in a directory named Pentagon Trophies, securing it behind 256-bit encryption. Over on his IRC chat, he boasted in vague terms, "I've got enough intel to ignite World War III." When another hacker pressed him for evidence, Jonathan shared just one line from a secret memo, blacking out all but the header, TS/SI/Nofifor//O/RCON. Top secret, special intelligence. No foreign nationals, originator controlled. The room fell quiet. It dawned on everyone that this guy had breached the pinnacle of U.S. military safeguards. But how much longer could a kid hold on to secrets this volatile? And what other eyes might be scanning those identical networks? On October 29, 1999, Rebecca Foster, a DT security analyst, spotted odd data patterns in the Dulles router records. They were faint yet steady, hinting at repeated packet copying. She launched a traceback. It turned out someone had been draining their full data feed for 10 weeks. Her findings sparked Flashpoint Alpha, the Pentagon's top-tier cyber alert. Soon after, experts from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and FBI Cyber Division swarmed DT's offices. The clues pointed to a slick setup, bespoke malware, tight OPSEC, and no clear fingerprints. Suspects ranged from Russia's SVR and China's Third Department to Iran's budding cyber teams. Yet no one thought to look at Miami area high schools. Under FBI Special Agent Mark Anderson's lead, the probe followed the breach across 17 proxies spanning 9 nations. Every jump was picked to dodge legal reach, Russia to China, Brazil to Romania. Jonathan slipped up once, though. He sometimes linked straight in while debugging hacks, figuring short bursts wouldn't get recorded. By November 14th, the team pinpointed it. 3 seconds of unmasked access from IP 24.9, 3.4, 1.106, tied to Bell South user Robert James in Pinellas, Florida. Linking it to NASA's probe showed the same IP hitting Marshall Space Flight Center back in June. The Phantom now had an identity, Jonathan James, 16, a student at South Miami Senior High School. On December 8, 1999, the FBI kicked off round-the-clock monitoring of Jonathan. Agents tailed him as he pedaled to class, grabbed solo lunches in the cafeteria, and headed home by 3:15 p.m. daily. They tracked his online activity, which had shifted to games and schoolwork searches, almost like he felt the net tightening. Agents quizzed his instructors, who painted him as a sharp but isolated teen. His IQ clocked in at 159, with flawless marks in computer science, but flops in English and history due to skipping classes. Ms. Rodriguez, one teacher, recalled how Jonathan rebuilt the school's network in a single lunch period after admins got locked out, accomplishing in 20 minutes what their IT pros couldn't manage in 2 days. That insight hit the FBI. This wasn't some villain or spy they were after. It was a prodigy who saw U.S. defenses as just another level to beat. Come January 26, 2000, at 4:30 a.m., the takedown squad gathered. 15 agents, 3 local PD teams, and a cyber expert from Carnegie Mellon University, tasked with safeguarding digital traces. They braced for firepower, booby traps, and data wipes. What they got was a quiet suburb home with a busted porch lamp and stacked papers. Agent Anderson signaled at 5:47 a.m. The door battering ram met no resistance. It was already open, and they stormed Jonathan's room. There he sat, just as they'd imagined, at his PC with headphones clamped on, fingers flying over keys. He missed their arrival until Anderson's hand on his shoulder jolted him. Jonathan pivoted gradually, eyed the weapons and shields, and muttered, "Figured you'd get here eventually." The raid's evidence haul stretched 4 hours. They inventoried 13 hard drives, 271 CD-ROMs, 44 floppies, 3 laptops, 2 desktop PCs, and a Sharp Wizard OZ 750 holding coded password files. From his desk, they seized a spiral-bound notebook listing hand-scribbled notes on 89 hacks, targeting spots like Ford Motor Company, Lockheed Martin, and the Miami-Dade School District. The real clincher, though, was Jonathan's own words. In questioning, he laid out every trick in his playbook, guiding agents through breaches they'd never spotted. Agent Anderson would later state in court, quote, 9. What made Jonathan spill everything? What pushed him to aid the institution he'd outsmarted? September 21, 2000. In the federal courthouse of Florida's Southern District, located in Miami, Jonathan appeared before Judge Barry Garber, dressed in an ill-fitting suit borrowed from his father, which made him seem even younger than his actual age of 16. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christopher Clark laid out the accusations. 2 juvenile computer crime charges, each potentially leading to up to 10 years behind bars. Prosecutors highlighted several groundbreaking elements. He was the first underage individual to infiltrate Department of Defense systems, the youngest ever to obtain sensitive nuclear defense data, and the overall harm amounted to more than $1.7 million. Yet Clark pointed out Jonathan's willingness to assist authorities. His full admission had spared what could have been years of probing, sparing additional millions in expenses. Among those in the courtroom were NASA specialists, Department of Defense representatives, Jonathan's family, and a trio of fellow students from his computer class, there to back their jailed idol. Judge Garber issued a ruling that would shape how cyber offenses were handled in prosecutions for years to come. 6 months in a federal youth facility, followed by 3 years of supervised release. No personal computer access allowed until he turned 18, plus 500 hours volunteering to help elderly folks learn basic computing skills, along with formal letters of regret to NASA and the Department of Defense. Garber included a distinctive clause, though. Jonathan would have to educate government security groups on his techniques, turning him into a reluctant advisor for the very organizations he had compromised. Garber said to him, "Everyone was caught off guard by Jonathan's reply. I didn't intend any real damage. I only aimed to show it was possible." At the Federal Detention Center in Miami, Jonathan spent his sentence in Cell Block J alongside 6 other young inmates, mostly involved in drug sales, vehicle thefts, and one who had tried to kill someone. The teen who had penetrated the Pentagon's defenses found himself unable to even send an email. He tutored fellow inmates who couldn't read in basic math, repaired the guards' machines under close watch, and produced a 47,000-word piece on social manipulation and the human element's role in network weaknesses. That paper, titled Trust Architecture: Why Humans Are Always the Weakest Link, ended up as mandatory material at the NSA's National Cryptologic School. Letters from his dad hid subtle Pascal code snippets, tiny scripts that, when run, outputted quote _13 Jonathan had essentially rescued them all. When he walked free on March 19, 2001, the landscape had shifted dramatically. The internet boom had collapsed. The 9/11 attacks loomed just half a year in the future, elevating cybersecurity from a niche interest to a core national concern. The Patriot Act was on the horizon, reclassifying exploits like his as acts of domestic terror. For Jonathan, though, the day-to-day hurdle was far more basic: getting by without tech. He took a job at Radio Shack, hawking gadgets he wasn't permitted to use himself. Now and then, shoppers would spot him from media reports. "Wait, aren't you that NASA hacker kid?" He'd grin and steer the conversation elsewhere. Ideally, the narrative would wrap up neatly here. A wayward coder pays his debt, gains wisdom, and reintegrates as an upstanding member of society. Yet Jonathan James's journey included a final, tragic turn. In 2007, after intruders hit TJX stores and swiped data from 45 million credit cards, officials zeroed in on Jonathan as a prime suspect, even without any proof. The constant scrutiny, monitoring, and blanket presumption of wrongdoing pushed him over the edge. On May 18, 2008, at 24 years old, Jonathan ended his life with a suicide note reading, "I have no faith in the justice system. Perhaps my actions will send a stronger message to the public." The young man who had revealed flaws in the nation's online defenses fell victim to the same framework he had sought to strengthen via his revelations. His influence endures in routine software updates, vulnerability assessments, and the ongoing awareness that a tech-savvy adolescent with dial-up access can bring down titans. But one element remains undisclosed until now. Recall that encrypted Pentagon directory Jonathan secured? Pentagon trophies? The FBI couldn't break into it. Hidden away on a confiscated drive in some storage vault is sensitive military intel, shielded by a password from a boy now gone. The entity safeguarding the country's atomic weapons had been bested by a 15-year-old. And from beyond the grave, Jonathan still guarded their confidential data. His experiences would motivate waves of young coders, each more daring and precocious than before. 2 decades on, yet another youth would stun the globe by seizing control of Twitter profiles belonging to Barack Obama, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates all at once, as the online world observed in real time. He went by Graham Clark in person, or Plugwalk Joe in digital spaces. Only 17, he orchestrated the boldest social platform breach ever recorded. Curious about how a Tampa teen compelled the planet's elite to post on his terms? Check out the account of the Twitter hacker youth. It's wilder than Jonathan's saga by far.